a boy from the harbour. The village of Harborhaven clung to the edge of the fjord, its wooden houses weathered by salty winds and endless rains. Life in Harborhaven was a cycle of tides and toil, and the sea was both provider and predator. It was here that Arnold was born, the son of a fisherman and a seamstress, in a home that smelled of brine and threadbare nets. Arnold was a quiet child, often found perched on the rocky shore, gazing out at the waves. His peers teased him for his dreamy nature, calling him the boy with his head in the clouds. But Arnold saw something in the horizon that others could not. "What are you staring at, boy?" his father Edwin would ask gruffly. "The sea's no place for dreamers." Yet it was the sea that called to Arnold, louder than his father's warnings and the mockery of other children. When he turned 12, he began working on fishing boats, mending nets, hauling lines, and learning the unforgiving rhythms of life on the water. By 16, he had signed on to a merchant ship bound for far-off ports. "A fool's ambition," Einar grumbled, but Arnold didn't listen. He was determined to leave the narrow horizons of Grimshofen behind. Even as a boy, Arnold harbored a fascination with tales of the wider world. Travelers who passed through Harborhaven spun stories of bustling cities, jungles teeming with life, and seas so vast they seemed endless. Arnold devoured these tales, imagining himself in distant lands, far removed from the suffocating predictability of his small fishing village. At night, he would sit by the shoreline, the waves lapping at his feet as he stared at the stars. To Arnold, the sea was a living thing, whispering secrets only he could hear. "You're a strange one," said Tess, a girl from the village who sometimes joined him. She was one of the few who didn't mock him, though she often looked at him with a mix of curiosity and exasperation. "I'm not strange," Arnold replied quietly. "I just feel there's more out there." But even Thora couldn't understand the depth of his yearning. It wasn't just wanderlust, it was a need to escape, to find a place where he could truly belong. Seafarer's hope was harsh and grueling. The crew, a ragtag mix of grizzled veterans and young dreamers like Arnold, worked from dawn until exhaustion. But it was not the work that weighed on Arnold's shoulders, it was the company. The men mocked his quietness and his reluctance to join their bawdy camaraderie. They called him Silent Arnold and the Ghost, their jests often edging toward cruelty. "What's the matter, boy?" sneered Eric, a burly deckhand with a permanent scowl. "Afraid your words might blow away with the wind?" Arnold would say nothing, his pale eyes fixed on the horizon. He bore their jibes without complaint, retreating to the ship's bow at night to stare at the stars. Despite his isolation, Arnold learned quickly. He became an able sailor, his instincts sharp and his hands skilled. Over the years, he sailed to ports as far-flung as Alexandria and Shanghai. Yet no matter how far he traveled, he remained an enigma to his crewmates, a solitary figure in a world of noise and camaraderie. In his rare moments of solitude, Arnold kept a journal, filling its pages with sketches of the places he visited and the thoughts he couldn't share aloud. He wrote about the vibrant markets of Alexandria, where spices and silk mingled in the air, and the serene beauty of a sunrise over the Indian Ocean. But most often, he wrote about the sea, its moods, its mysteries, and the way it seemed to mirror his own restless spirit. One fateful voyage brought the seafarer's hope to the port of Lirandra, nestled at the base of a jagged mountain range. The air was thick with the scent of exotic spices and the chatter of merchants, but Arnold's attention was drawn upward, to the peaks shrouded in mist. "You're not thinking of climbing those mountains, are you?" Eric scoffed as he unloaded crates of silk. "Locals say they're cursed." Arnold's only response was a faint smile. That evening, while the crew drank in the taverns, he slipped away and began his ascent. The climb was arduous, the rocky paths narrow and treacherous, but Arnold felt a pull, an inexplicable force guiding him higher. At dawn, he reached a plateau where a small hut stood, its roof made of slate and its walls etched with strange symbols. A man emerged, his robes dark and his eyes piercing. His presence was commanding, and Arnold felt a shiver of unease. "You've come far," the man said, his voice deep and resonant. "Why?" "I was drawn here," Arnold replied, his voice steadier than he felt. The sorcerer studied him for a long moment before gesturing for him to enter. Inside the hut, the air was thick with incense, and shelves lined with ancient tomes and jars of curious substances. The sorcerer spoke of power and retribution, of the strength hidden within those who are underestimated. What passed between them that day remained Arnold's secret. But when he descended the mountain, his pale eyes carried a new intensity, and the mocking laughter of his crewmates no longer seemed to touch him. Arnold's encounters in Lyrandra left him changed. He no longer felt the sting of mockery. Instead, he carried himself with a quiet confidence that unsettled those around him. Eric, who had always been the loudest in ridiculing Arnold, found himself avoiding the younger man's gaze. "Something's off about him," Eric muttered to a fellow sailor. "He's got eyes like a storm, like he's watching and waiting for something." But what Arnold was waiting for, even he did not yet fully understand. The first to notice the change was Eric. It began with small misfortunes, a rope snapping, a crate toppling, a nasty fall that left him with a broken arm. The crew laughed at his bad luck, but Eric began to eye Arnold with suspicion. "You've got a dark look about you," Eric muttered one evening. "What did you do up in those mountains?" Arnold said nothing, his silence more unnerving than any denial. The other sailors, too, began to feel uneasy. When a violent storm nearly capsized the ship and strange whispers were heard in the howling wind, they blamed Arnold. "He's cursed us," one man cried, his face pale with fear. The mocking turned to avoidance, and avoidance turned to fear. The crew kept their distance, whispering of dark magic and vengeful spirits. Even the captain, a seasoned mariner with little patience for superstition, began to grow wary of Arnold. "He's trouble," the captain confided to his first mate. "I don't believe in curses, but there's something about him that chills the bones." Arnold remained unfazed by their fear. If anything, he seemed to thrive on it, his pale eyes glinting with a quiet satisfaction whenever a crewmate stumbled or muttered a prayer under their breath. He had learned to endure their cruelty. Now he relished their unease. Years passed, and Arnold's reputation darkened further. He moved from ship to ship, always the outsider, always feared. Misfortunes seemed to follow him, an anchor chain snapping, a cargo fire, a captain falling ill. Whispers of his connection to the sorcerer spread, and sailors spoke of him in hushed tones. Finally, a group of crewmates aboard the Northern Star decided they had endured enough. Led by Eric, now a bitter, scarred man, they conspired to rid themselves of Arnold once and for all. "We'll make it look like an accident," Eric hissed. "A loose plank, a fall overboard. No one will question it." But Arnold, ever watchful, sensed their intent. He began to prepare, his mind racing with possibilities. He was no longer the boy from Grimshofen, helpless against cruelty. He was something far more dangerous. The ship lay anchored in calm waters. Eric and his men crept toward Arnold's quarters, their knives gleaming in the moonlight. But when they pushed open the door, they found the room empty. A sudden gust of wind extinguished their lanterns, plunging them into darkness. Whispers filled the air, low and menacing, like the voice of the sea itself. "You dare?" Arnold's voice echoed, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Panic gripped the men as shadows twisted and writhed around them. One by one they screamed and fled, their minds overwhelmed by terror. By morning, Eric was found huddled on the deck, muttering incoherently, his knife discarded at his feet. The Northern Star returned to port with a shaken crew and a silent Arnold. The tale of what had transpired spread quickly, growing more fantastical with each retelling. Sailors spoke of curses and vengeance, of shadows that devoured the wicked. Arnold left the ship soon after, disappearing into the fog. Some said he returned to the mountains, others believed he roamed the seas still, a ghost among men. For years, his story lingered in the harbours and taverns, a cautionary tale of cruelty and its price. Those who heard it often glanced over their shoulders, wary of the silent sailor who might be watching. And so, Arnold became a legend, a man who had faced the cruelty of the world and answered with a power that none could comprehend. A man who was both feared and forgotten, a shadow on the horizon of the seas he once called home.
Arnold's name became both a curse and a warning in seafarers' lore. Ships changed their routes to avoid crossing paths with him, and the stories grew darker with each retelling. Sailors swore they saw his figure on the horizon, a solitary silhouette against the dying light, watching and waiting. Yet those who dismissed the warnings were reminded that Arnold's reach extended beyond the sea. Eric, once the instigator of betrayal, had returned to a quiet village, nursing scars both visible and unseen. But his nights were haunted by whispers. He would wake drenched in sweat, the sound of waves crashing inside his mind, though the sea was miles away. One stormy night, Eric vanished. Villagers found his empty boat adrift in the harbour the next morning, his knife rusted and encrusted with salt. New generations of sailors grew up hearing Arnold's tale, parents using it as a bedtime warning. Be kind, or the silent sailor will find you. Yet, as with all legends, there were those who sought the truth. A young writer, intrigued by the idea of confronting myth, set sail to Grimshaven to uncover the roots of the sailor's enigmatic past. Through interviews and faded ship logs, she pieced together fragments of Arnold's life. But the deeper she dug, the more she sensed that Arnold's story was more than legend. A storm struck the night she planned to leave Grimshaven. Her ship returned the next day with a journal washed ashore, its final entry cryptic. He's more than shadow. He is the sea's fury given form. Arnold's legacy endured, a haunting reminder of human cruelty and the powers that lie waiting in the uncharted waters of the world. His name was whispered among the waves, where shadows danced and the horizon never ended. It was said that even the storms feared to cross paths with Arnold, for his presence seemed to stir the seas into tempests more violent than nature intended. Ships that dared enter the waters near his suspected haunts would often return with missing crew, their sails shredded and hulls scarred by forces unseen. Yet Arnold remained elusive, a phantom whispered about but rarely encountered. But in the town of Whale Bay, the legend took on a more personal tone. A survivor, racked with fever and madness, washed ashore, clutching a fragment of Arnold's journal. Inside were cryptic drawings of storm-tossed ships and the spectral figure of a sailor standing at the helm of the sea's fury. The survivor's last words before succumbing.
By the harbor, where the tides forever roar, lived a boy with restless dreams, yearning for a distant shore. Mocked and shunned, he sailed away with silence as his shield. But the cruel winds followed close, refusing him to yield. A silent sailor, his wrath concealed in the heart of the sea. His fate is sealed. To the mountains high he climbed, where whispers filled the air. A sorcerer with piercing eyes waited for him there. Promises of strength were made, revenge began to stir. A power born of ancient wrath, his soul became a blur. Oh, the curse of Arnold haunts the waves. Through storm and shadow, the ocean raves. A silent sailor, his wrath concealed in the heart of the sea. His fate is sealed. The sailors laughed, the sailors schemed, but their plots unraveled and they screamed. The shadows danced, the winds did howl. Arnold's curse made the mighty bow. Now the sea, it speaks his name in whispers dark and low. Ships avoid his spectral path where phantom tempests blow.